kilometers east of Tripoli, Gaddafi's hometown and one of the colonel's last strongholds. The NTC report that at least 4 of its fighters, 11 under other reports, have been killed during this offensive, 7 others wounded, and also there is information that 40 loyalists have been captured in Sept. We are receiving reports that Gaddafi's information chief, Dr. Musa Ibrahim, could have been one of them, but this information is very hard to verify. Fighting over another centre of Gaddafi's support, Bani Walid, some 200 kilometers south of the capital Tripoli, continues, while concerns grow over the security, safety of civilians trapped in the cities and the areas where the clashes between the rebels and Gaddafi's loyalists still continuing. Meanwhile, the UN is expected to ease sanctions against Libya. Visiting the country on Thursday, British Prime Minister David Cameron and French President Nicolas Sarkozy have said that they would introduce a UN Security Council draft resolution which expects to abolish international arms embargo and freeze Libyan assets that had been frozen as part of sanctions against Gaddafi. Also established UN mission here in the country. The leaders of the 2 NATO countries that played a key role in the Libyan revolution have also said that NATO mission here on the ground will continue for as long as it is necessary to protect civilians here in Libya. Meanwhile, some are skeptical about the real aims of this mission, as it more looks right now like backing the rebels and helping them take control over the rest of the country rather than protecting civilians. So it's now a little bit far from its initial goal.
Our correspondent Maria Finoshina, well, as the British Prime Minister prepares to depart Libya after he's gone, celebrating the end of Gaddafi's 42-year rule, anger's growing in the UK over the arms fair that once hosted the Colonel when he was stocking up with new military hardware. Critics say it's indeed one of the world's biggest weaponry sales floors and that it provided Libya's active leader with the means to launch his deadly crackdown on the opposition. And as RT's Ivor Bennett reports next, some prominent dictators have been shopping around for arms in London too.
Selling weapons could be a moral minefield, but not here. This is the world's biggest arms fair and a massive earner for the British economy. The government's putting its conscience aside as international delegates shop for tanks, rocket launchers and missiles. So long as business is being done here, it doesn't seem to matter who's buying. This year's guest list includes countries like Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, both regimes that violently suppressed demonstrations earlier this year. Bahrain was accused of opening fire on its unarmed citizens in February. Saudi Arabia sent its National Guard in to help, driving armoured vehicles made by BAE Systems, the UK's largest defence company. Its products on display here would be at home in any Bond film. This tank can alter its temperature to change its infrared appearance. But like the British government, the company can't change its spots. It says there are countries it won't sell to, but that doesn't include any here. If a country's been invited by the British government here, it's probably going to be on your list of countries you are able to sell to, presumably.
It makes sense, yes.
Do you think it's right to sell to, say, regimes like Bahrain that have repressed democratic protests?
I don't have any comments on that one.
These protesters are from the Stop the Arms Fair coalition. They're angry it's going ahead despite the recent crackdowns in Libya and Egypt. Both former customers of Britain using their purchases against their own people.
We're paying the price now in the Mediterranean because we've sold weapons to nearly all the countries that are now experiencing the Arab Spring. I think it's short-sighted, it's bad for this country, it doesn't make money, it makes wars.
Fighter jets, tear gas.
This year's shop include 14 countries branded authoritarian by human rights groups, a fact the government came clean on just one day before trade began.
I'm sure they're very embarrassed because on the one hand in February David Cameron was going to Egypt, walking around Tahrir Square, proclaiming his belief in human rights and freedom and democracy. And the next stop was Kuwait, and it turned out he was travelling with 8 arms company executives, and that the whole purpose of the trip was trade, and one of the main trades they were trying to make was weapons trade to the Middle East.
The government says it's tightening restrictions on who can buy weapons that could be used for repression, and it claims an invite here doesn't guarantee an export licence. But defence is big business for Britain. It generated £22 billion for the economy last year, and the UK is now the second biggest weapons exporter in the world. With money like that up for grabs, turning customers away empty-handed may prove difficult. I'm Bennett, RT, London.
Syria's regular demonstrations are